But that's not all. There's more. You may not have ever heard it, because this hadith has been put into the cold storage of the fridge. It's no longer relevant today. What is it? And so it is inevitable. It is just a matter of time. Wait and you will see it. There will be women of Dajjal who will seek to become Imam and deliver the khutbah. When that time comes, and it is going to come, what those women of Dajjal would do would be to exploit every mistake that we make. Every mistake that we make will open a door for them. And you may not be around to see it, but your sons will face the music tomorrow. Why did my grandfather, why did my father create this opportunity for them? Because he knew what modern Western civilization does not know. In anticipation of that day, we're telling you tonight, what are the rights of women in the house of Allah? When we know what are the rights of women in the house of Allah, if those rights are now denied to her, don't react with anger towards the speaker. No. Rather, weep for tomorrow that is coming. Because so long as you deny her those rights in the house of Allah, it is as certain as the sun rises in the east that she is going to exploit that tomorrow to build a masjid for women only. And when she starts quoting these ahadith that we will be quoting tonight, 20 years from now, your daughters are going to be swept. And your daughters are going to flock to that masjid, where a woman will be on the mimbar giving the khutbah and leading the salah. That is the context in which we are giving this talk tonight. This hadith is in Sahih Muslim. Nobody can take it out. It is still there. What did the Prophet say, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? The best row for the men, meaning in the masjid, is the first. And the worst, the one with the greatest potential for evil, shar means evil, is the last. And the best row for the women, meaning in the masjid, not inside their home, no, in the masjid. That's the meaning of Salah. The best row for the woman is the last. And the worst, the one with the greatest shar, and shar means evil, danger, is the first. These are the words of He from whom we get the religion of Islam, who is the only authority on earth, the only authority. Allah sent Him to deliver Islam to us. What does this hadith mean? We can understand that the first row for the men is the best row, but we don't understand this one about the last row being evil. And when he says that the last row is the best for the woman, it looks as though he's talking about women performing salat in the masjid. Or, are women allowed to perform salat in the masjid? Isn't it strange? that around the world today, there are many masajid where it is prohibited for women to come and pray. From where did we get this, that women are not allowed in the masjid? In the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, there must have been conditions of grave insecurity. And since men are the guardians of a woman cannot leave her home unless her guardian is satisfied that she is safe. And so you can prohibit your wife from coming to the masjid. Of course you can do that. But that will be because of conditions of insecurity. Yes. But that cannot be a permanent ban. Because if you make it a permanent ban, then you have changed the religion. Because from this hadith we know that women came to the masjid for salah. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam has himself said specifically, do not prohibit women from coming to the masjid for salah. You can say to your wife, it's better for you to pray at home. But if she says, I want to come to the masjid, as the wife of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he is the Khalifa, and she wants to come to the masjid, he could not stop her. Why don't you stop me, she said. Amirul Mu'mineen, why don't you stop me? She used to say to him. He could not. Because she had the right to come. Because Allah's Messenger gave her the right. The only time he could stop her is if there are conditions of insecurity. And even now, right here in Mitchell's place, if there are conditions of insecurity, you can tell your woman to stay at home. Not allowed to come to the masjid. You can do it now. And so if women are banned from coming to the masjid, you've changed your religion. What is going to be your fate on the Day of Judgment? Hadith is in Sahih Bukhari, but in two forms, both of which are dangerous. That it will be very hot on the Day of Judgment. Heat will be terrible, and we'll be very thirsty. But the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam will be coming to him, and he will be standing by Al-Kawthar, the spring of water, and he'll be offering water to members of his Ummah. But there will be some who would come to him, and he would refuse to give them water. And they would say, O Messenger of Allah, we are Muslims. We are members of your Ummah. He would say, but you changed your religion after I left. No water for you today. That is one form of the hadith. The other one is worse than that. In the other form, it is Allah who instructs him, don't give them any water. Allah who instructs him, don't give them any water. Because they changed the religion. The worst place to change your religion is in the house of Allah. And if you prevent women from coming to the house of Allah without a valid reason, like for example conditions of rioting and anarchy and so on, without valid condition, you prevent women, you make it a permanent ban, you've changed the religion. So now, okay, if you've denied her that right, and tomorrow the masjid is built for women only, you can cry on that day. You can cry on that day. But you'll deserve what you got. Because they're going to exploit. They're going to exploit the ban on women coming to the masjid on that day. But what about if we allow her to come to the masjid? Then what is this about the last row of the men being the one with the greatest evil, and the first row of the women being the one with the greatest evil? This is Sahih Muslim. Did I tell you that? Did I tell you that this hadith is in Sahih Muslim? Did I say it? Yes. I did? Well then it is Sahih. Alright? Nobody can take it out of Sahih Muslim now, too late. You have to deal with this hadith. The only way we can understand this hadith, the only way it will have any meaning, is because the women were praying behind the men. That's the only way. The women were praying behind the men. They were not praying in an annex. They were not praying in the basement. They were not praying in an upstairs gallery. If any of these things prevail, then we have in fact denied women the right that Allah gave to her. And Nabi Muhammad ﷺ has spoken of in this hadith that women must pray at the back and men at the front. So, but why the evil? If the women are at the back and the men are at the front, why is it that the last row of the men have the most evil and the first row of the women have the greatest shar? Because that's the hadith I quoted for you. There's only one way to understand that. Only one. And that is that as the row of men keep on going backwards, and the rows of the women keep on coming forward, eventually they will approach each other and be close to each other. And because of the physical proximity of men and women, there are sparks which fly when men and women are close to each other. That's where the danger lies. Oh, I see. Well, that means that there was no barrier between the men and women. Because if you put up a barrier between the men and the women, then there will be no physical proximity. They will not be drawing close to each other. And therefore you can take this hadith and put it in the cold storage. Yeah, take this hadith and put it in the cold storage. Because there is no longer any question of shar. That's common sense. So that means that in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, men and women performed their Salah in the Masjid, number one. Men prayed at the front and women prayed at the back. Number two, there was no barrier between the men and the women. Number three, and therefore the conclusion is that men and women prayed in the same space, not in two separate spaces, in the same space, with the men at the front and the women at the back. But that's not all. There's more. You may not have ever heard it, because this hadith has been put into the cold storage of the fridge. It's no longer relevant today. What is it? He said, when you go down in Sajda, the woman must remain in Sajda longer than the men. You never heard this, did you? Never heard it. It's there. Some of you are shaking your heads. When you go down in Sajda, in Salat in the Masjid, the woman must remain in Sajda longer than the men. Because a man may not have enough cloth to cover his private parts. I was teaching this subject to the woman, so when I came to this part, I just said, may not have enough cloth to cover himself, but because you're men in front of me, I can give you the hadith as it is. A man may not have enough cloth to cover his private parts. And when he goes down in Sajda, if the woman raises her head too quickly, then this sight would be there before her, which is inappropriate. And so he commanded the woman to remain in Sajda longer than the men. Do not raise your head at the same time that the men are raising their head. This is the religion of Islam that came from Nabi Muhammad ﷺ. And the religion of Islam comes from him. There is only one way that we can understand this hadith. And that is that when women prayed at the back of men, if a woman raised her head too quickly, that there will be no barrier between her and the men. None. And therefore she could see that the man is not fully covered. So she's praying with both her ears and her eyes. If you put a barrier between the men and the woman, or if you put the woman in the basement, or in an annex, or in an upstairs gallery, tell me why should she remain in Sajda longer than men? Give me one good reason why we should take that hadith out of the cold storage where we put it now, having changed the religion. Do you see the storm that is coming 20, 30 years from now? Are you seeing what they're going to be arguing right here in Cape Town? You might be in your grave sleeping, so you wouldn't witness that storm, that evil storm that will sweep away Cape Town. But your son will be there. And what you're doing is digging a grave for your own children tomorrow. Where the woman will be quoting these ahadith that I'm now quoting. And the women are going to be saying, you denied us our rights in the house of Allah. And so what could we do? We're going to build our own masjid for women. And a woman will be on the mimbar, and she'll give the khutbah, she'll lead the salah. You can't stop her, because you open the door for Dajjal to exploit this opportunity.